Governor Sherrill's $60.7 billion budget has been signed into law. It came down to the final hours of the budget deadline on Tuesday night. The governor addressed the media last night before signing the bill to explain the funding priorities outlined in it. Here to help us understand what was agreed to and what was added in the final stretch is our budget and finance writer, John Reitmeyer, who joins us as part of our Under the Dome series. John, great to see you. I know it was a late night for most journalists last night, trying to keep an eye on when this budget got signed. We did avoid a government shutdown. It came down to the wire. But Governor Sherrill calls this a fiscally disciplined budget, an affordability-focused spending plan that she says finds solution to cut costs without cutting services. At the high level, can you just tell us what this budget accomplishes, what it funds?
Yeah, sure. And it is great to be here today discussing this and not covering a government shutdown, that's for sure. From the big picture, there's a modest increase in spending. And, in some ways, it really depends on how you feel about incremental improvement. If that's something that you think is good, whether you want to fix all the problems right away, as some would also want. But in this case, the incremental improvement would be that, the state's been trending spending wise at a very significant uptick over the last several years. And in this case, spending is increasing, though lower than the rate of inflation. So for those who want to see the governor and lawmakers hold the line, perhaps they're disappointed, but it seems like the increase was curbed relative to prior years. And while that's occurring, there's still full funding of the state's school aid law. And there is a massive, more than $7 billion contribution to keep pace with the state's public worker pension obligations. This is notable because in years past, up until, say, the last half decade or so, the state wasn't fully covering that obligation, and it created a huge accrued liability that lawmakers and the governor today are still paying off. So on sort of the fiscal responsibility side, you could chalk those things up, meeting obligations while trying to do that, increasing funding for direct property tax relief and some other things, expanding the child tax credit, all within that spending increase that's lower than the annual rate of inflation.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of feedback already from various groups, business groups, advocacy groups. There's a lot of praise. There's criticism for what was done in this budget. Even AARP praising overall some of the high level things, but critical that Stay NJ did drop its eligibility requirements. And of course, for those who think that fully funding the pension and schools is a good thing, there's probably equal criticism for this add-on that we saw, this supplemental spending bill. And it's a nuance that maybe only journalists and folks who cover politics care about. But can you explain how the governor in this budget added on some of these, whether you call it earmarks or Christmas tree items or pork?
Sure, and those are all terms of art. And we should say, even with full pension funding, cost of living adjustments for retirees are frozen. And so a lot of retirees will be upset about even what happened with pension funding. And even with full school funding, many districts are seeing cuts. So the overall amount goes up, but because of the way the formula is written, many districts see cuts. And even on those, you mentioned business reaction, there are changes in tax policies affecting businesses that are increasing the revenue generated from them. So, there are a lot of ways to look at this. The specifics of a supplemental spending bill. So Trenton has sort of become notorious for added spending. And, last year we counted, I think, 500 or 600 million in new spending, and it comes into the budget at the very end, and it's usually not funded. So it widens or creates what's called a structural gap, meaning you're spending more than you're taking in. And that's not sustainable because eventually the bill comes due, as we've seen with pension funding. And so this year, a big chunk of that type of spending didn't happen within the budget itself. It happened in what's called a supplemental spending bill. And just in sort of the accounting way of how this works, that spending was scored to the prior fiscal year, the one that just ended yesterday. And that's really the budget that Phil Murphy enacted in his final year in office. So lawmakers are the ones who like to add, in the main, this type of spending at the very end of the process. And again, going back to incremental improvement. So this year, the governor said she wanted to hold the line on top level budget spending, and she largely accomplished that. And she also wanted any additions to be offset with cuts. And that was also largely accomplished in the spending bill. However, when we take a look at this supplemental appropriation, that moved right alongside the budget yesterday. So I count it as very much intertwined. That added 360 million nearly in new spending that's not funded. So there weren't cuts made. And basically when we wash it all out, last year at this point, we were looking at a structural gap of nearly $1.5 billion. This year, we're looking at a structural gap of a little less than $1.4 billion. So again, incremental improvement if that's going to make you happy, but not fixing the problem for those who want to see these problems solved.
John, I just want to play a clip of the governor responding to questions about the fact that they split that up and they put it into this year's current fiscal, well, I should say as of yesterday's current fiscal budget. Here's what the governor had to say.
These legislators behind me put in some really good ideas and projects, but we couldn't balloon the budget. When I keep saying it was 60.7 in March and it's 60.7 now, normally you see, anywhere near $1 billion. That's been going on for about a decade. But we are charting a path forward of affordability for the people of New Jersey and opportunity in the future and growth for our children.
So she gets to hang her hat on that 60.7. It didn't move, but less transparency this time around, just a few seconds left in terms of how they did that and what type of oversight there is of that additional appropriation.
Yeah, a little less transparency because when changes are made at the last minute to the spending bill itself, there's a written record, meaning somebody sponsors each change and they're supposed to include justification for the request. When you do it through the supplemental bill, we only know the sponsor of the bill itself. There's no written sponsor for each individual line item. And so that's a step backward on transparency in this case.
Yeah, we've got to leave it there, but always great to have your insight. John Reitmeyer, budget and finance writer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Under the Dome is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.